All right, so picture this. Federal agents, lots of them, swarming a massive construction site down in Georgia. But here's the thing. It wasn't, a typical criminal bust. No, this was big. A really large-scale immigration enforcement action, September 4th, 2025. You had ICE working together with the FBI, DEA, IRS, even the U.S. Marshal Service and the Georgia State Patrol, all descending on this one place, the huge Hyundai-LG battery plant construction site. HSI, that's Homeland Security Investigations, they later called it the biggest single-site enforcement action, well, in Department of Homeland Security history. And again, it wasn't about drugs or violent crime. It was strictly about who was legally authorized to work on American soil, that fundamental principle. By the end of the day, 475 workers were detained, the vast majority South Korean nationals, apparently in the U.S. illegally or working without proper authorization. So this goes way beyond just numbers, right? It's a direct, pretty forceful confrontation over American jobs and, really, the rule of law. Tonight, we're going to unpack how this multi-billion-dollar foreign investment, one that was celebrated for promising new American jobs, just collided head-on with America's immigration laws. It sparked an international incident, definitely, and a really fiery debate over who truly deserves to fill these jobs here at home. Now, you've sent us articles, reports, your own notes on this. It's clearly a complex event, and our mission here in this deep dive, it's pretty clear. Cut through the noise. Extract the vital insights from all these sources you've shared, help you understand the real economic fallout, the political fallout, and what this moment really means for our nation's priorities. Balancing business and border integrity. And let's be clear, this wasn't just any construction site. We're talking a massive joint venture. Hyundai and LG Energy Solution in Bryan County, Georgia. It's a cornerstone of the larger Metaplant America campus. An effort hailed by, well, quite a few people, including former President Biden and Georgia Governor Brian Kemp. Hailed as a triumph for American manufacturing, and specifically projected to create over 8,000 new American jobs, high-paying ones. But this raid, it just peeled back the curtain, didn't it? Showed a pretty stark reality about who is actually filling some of those roles, challenged that whole narrative.
It's really fascinating, how quickly something celebrated like that, a big economic development, can just expose these underlying tensions. Tensions between, well, wanting that foreign investment and the absolute fundamental principle of upholding our nation's laws, especially employment and immigration laws. It's a powerful reminder, isn't it, that even the biggest projects, the most significant economically, they aren't above the law. The goal has to be new American jobs, yes, but those jobs have to align with lawful employment for our citizens, always.
Okay, let's unpack the details then. This enforcement action, 475 individuals detained in one go. That's a huge number. Can you walk us through what the sources tell us? Who were these individuals exactly and why them? Why there?
Absolutely. So the sources indicate these 475 people were found to be working without authorization. And it wasn't just one type of violation. It was a mix. Some had apparently entered the country illegally. Others had overstayed temporary visas. And a really significant number, it seems, violated visa waiver programs. Those explicitly prohibit any kind of employment. Those waivers are just for tourism or maybe very short business trips, paid work. That's a direct violation of federal law. And HSI was clear. This wasn't random, not a sweep. It was the end result of a months-long, pretty meticulous investigation into alleged illegal hiring practices there at the site. Seeing all those agencies involved, federal, state, it really underscores the government's commitment, its unwavering commitment to investigating and addressing these violations. They see it as undermining federal law and, frankly, American labor.
Right, so planned, strategic, based on intelligence, not reactive. What about Hyundai? What was their immediate response? Had to be fast, given the scale, the publicity.
Oh, definitely fast. Hyundai Motor North America put out a statement very quickly. They were keen to clarify that none of the detained workers were directly employed by Hyundai itself. They pointed to a supplier, HOG, a battery company. Now, this supplier, according to our sources, reportedly had a bit of a history. Citations before for unsafe conditions, maybe employing undocumented workers too. So in response to the raid, Hyundai stressed its commitment to legal compliance, announced an immediate internal investigation. They put their North America Chief Manufacturing Officer, Chris Susak, in charge of it, tasked him with making sure all suppliers, all subcontractors on that whole Metaplant project stick strictly to U.S. law. It really highlights, doesn't it, the responsibility these major companies have. They need to ensure their entire supply chain, not just their direct hires, plays by the rules, especially when, taxpayer money or incentives might be involved.
Okay, and here's where it gets, really interesting. Touching the core of that American jobs promise. The Trump administration, you had figures like Tom Homan, former ICE director, a very strong voice on border enforcement. They've consistently argued raids like this are, Essential. Absolutely essential to protect jobs for American citizens. How did that viewpoint play out here with the Hyundai-LG raid specifically?
Honeman's perspective, and it was echoed quite a bit, is that companies that knowingly hire uh, illegal aliens, as he put it, are exploiting a vulnerable workforce, paying them less, maybe working them harder than American citizens. And that practice, he argues, directly undercuts the competitors who do follow the law, who pay U.S. citizen salaries. It creates an unfair advantage, so it harms law-abiding businesses, and critically, it harms American workers trying to compete fairly. He stressed, it's a crime to enter illegally, and it's also a crime to knowingly hire someone who isn't authorized to work here. So that viewpoint, it really champions fair competition, protecting our own labor market, and just the absolute necessity of enforcing our laws. No exceptions.
And President Trump himself weighed in publicly, very direct support for the raid. He said, quote, "They were illegal aliens and ICE was just doing its job." Pretty unambiguous stance from the top.
Absolutely zero ambiguity there. And that sentiment wasn't isolated. It was echoed by other key figures. You had Georgia Governor Brian Kent's office affirming the state's unwavering commitment to, quote, always enforce the law, including all state and federal immigration laws. They actively coordinated with ICE on this. Kemp made it clear Georgia wouldn't tolerate lawlessness in its workplaces. Then you had the Republican U.S. Senate candidate, Buddy Carter, applauding the action, said it put American workers first, protected communities from the scourge of illegal immigration.
Yeah.
So it's a chorus, really, reinforcing this powerful, unified message. The law applies to everyone, everywhere. It doesn't matter where you work or how big the project is. It's about upholding the rule of law for our own citizens, making sure American jobs actually means jobs for Americans.
But these actions, they don't happen in a vacuum, do they? South Korea, I mean, a key U.S. ally, a huge economic partner. They've invested billions here. They expressed concern and regret over the arrest. That must have created some diplomatic ripples, to say the least.
Oh, it definitely did. You had South Korean President Lee Jae-myung calling pretty quickly for an all-out response from his government to protect the rights of South Korean citizens and also the economic activities of their companies operating overseas. It really highlights that delicate balance, doesn't it, between a nation's sovereign right to enforce its own laws, especially immigration laws, and the need to maintain strong international ties, strong economic partnerships. For an ally like South Korea, with such significant investments, such strategic importance to the U.S., this kind of large-scale enforcement action, well, it inevitably creates tension, needs careful handling to avoid bigger problems down the line, economically or politically. It just underscores how enforcing national laws, even when necessary, can sometimes create friction, even with close friends.
So how quickly did that friction get managed? Because by September 7th, just a few days after the raid, South Korea announced a deal with the U.S., a deal to repatriate over 300 of its nationals. They were even planning to send a chartered plane. That seems incredibly fast for something this significant.
Is remarkably swift, you're right. And I think it speaks volumes. That quick agreement, plus South Korea's pledge to review and improve its own visa systems for business trips, it shows a clear recognition, really, from all sides that you have to comply with the established legal rules to prevent this kind of disruption. It's essential. It sends a strong message. Look, foreign investment is welcome, it's valued, encouraged even, but it must operate strictly within the framework of U.S. law. No shortcuts. And the quick repatriation, it also shows a commitment to deal with the immediate human side of it, while still reinforcing those legal obligations for companies operating here.
Okay, so connecting the dots here, what does it all mean? This deep dive into the Hyundai-LG raid feels like more than just one incident, right? It seems like a pretty vivid example of the Trump administration's broader agenda, cracking down on illegal immigration, increasing deportations, making workplace enforcement a real national priority, something that won't be compromised.
Yeah. Exactly. Stephen Schrank from HSI, remember, they're the main investigative arm of DHS dealing with this stuff, transnational crime, illegal immigration. He emphasized this specific operation was designed to, quote, protect jobs for Georgians and Americans. Yeah. He was very clear about the purpose, said a clear and unequivocal message, that message being, if you exploit our workforce, undermine our economy, violate federal laws, you will be held accountable. So this isn't just about the individual workers caught in the raid. It's bigger. It's a systemic approach aimed at holding companies, whole industries maybe, accountable for maintaining strictly legal employment practices. It's about safeguarding our labor market, upholding the integrity of our laws, and making sure that promise of American jobs isn't just talk, especially when companies might try to bend or break the rules. And that really brings up an important question, I think, for you, the listener. When you have these massive foreign investment projects promising American jobs, promising economic growth, Should we ever accept anything less than full, strict legal compliance?
Or is rigorous enforcement, even if it causes some short-term disruption, even if it creates diplomatic headaches, is that absolutely essential? Essential to uphold the rule of law, protect the integrity of our job market for all citizens. That goal, new American jobs, it has to align, always without exception, with lawful employment practices for the benefit of our country, our people.